February 15th, 1898, Havana Harbor, the USS Maine explodes. 266 American sailors dead. Tampa, Florida, a sleepy port city that few cared about, is about to become the launching point for American empire. This is the story they never taught you in school. You see, what happened in Tampa over the next 4 months didn't just win a war. It transformed America from an isolated nation into a global superpower. And almost nobody knows this story. I'm Greg. This is part 1 of Untold Stories, Tampa, 1898, a 5-part journey. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how the Spanish-American War started and why Ybor City became the secret weapon nobody saw coming. At the heart of our story is the Spanish-American War. This brief but pivotal conflict fought between the United States and Spain from April to August 1898 seems often overshadowed by America's longer and larger wars. But the Spanish-American War marked a key moment in American emergence onto the global stage. In the 1890s, Cuba was the epicenter of a growing liberation movement that sought independence from centuries of Spanish colonial rule. Since the mid-19th century, Cubans openly fought for independence from Spain, but failed to achieve much support from foreign nations. That changed in the 1890s when the Cuban struggle for independence drew the attention of powerful men in the United States who saw the overseas conflict as a potential for expansion. American newspapers, especially those of William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, sensationalized Spanish atrocities and fostered sympathy for the Cuban cause through yellow journalism. Economic interests also played a role. American investors had significant stakes in Cuban sugar and tobacco industries. The tipping point came on February 15, 1898. The explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor killed over 260 U.S. sailors. The event sent shockwaves through the American public. Sensationalist newspapers quickly blamed Spain, igniting outrage and a thirst for retribution. The rallying cry, "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain," swept the nation, galvanizing public opinion and pushing the United States toward war. It became a powerful symbol of national pride, sacrifice, and the justification for intervention. Finally, in April 1898, the U.S. Congress declared war on Spain. Shortly thereafter, American forces sailed to Cuba and invaded the island. While the first battle and decisive American victory took place on May 1, 1898 at Manila Bay in the Philippines, and major combat took place in Puerto Rico and Guam, the Spanish-American War was primarily fought on the island of Cuba. 2 of the most significant battles of the war took place near Santiago on July 1, 1898. Involved here were perhaps the best-known unit and military leader of the war, the Rough Riders, a volunteer cavalry led by future President Theodore Roosevelt. Here, they famously charged up Kettle Hill alongside regular Army units. Often overlooked, but absolutely essential to the victory, were the regiments from the 9th and 10th Cavalry, known as the Buffalo Soldiers. These African-American units had previously distinguished themselves in the American West, and now, in Cuba, they fought with extraordinary courage under heavy fire and suffered some of the war's highest casualties. Their bravery helped secure American victory and earned them lasting, if far too often unrecognized, honor in U.S. military history. With quick and decisive victories over Spanish forces, the hostilities ended by August, only months after they began. Roughly 3,000 Americans died. Under 400 were killed in combat. The rest died from disease. The war formally concluded with the Treaty of Paris on December 10, 1898. In the treaty, Spain ceded Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines to the United States and relinquished all claims to Cuba. The United States became protectorate of Cuba. Although brief, the conflict signaled the emergence of the United States as a global power and marked a turning point in both American foreign policy and colonial history. I will get back to the story in a moment. Before I started Journeys Through History, I was a full-time educator. Then, the teaching contract stopped being offered, and I realized at my age I may never find a full-time teaching position again. But I also knew I was far from done. So now I share my passion for history and the arts and my love of storytelling through my YouTube channel. I hope you'll join me for more Journeys Through History. Like and subscribe to the channel, and consider donating to help us bring you more stories like this. Now, let's get back to this story. In the wake of the Spanish-American War's brief but transformative campaign, the national spotlight shifted quickly to the spoils of victory and the rise of America as a global power. Yet the war's echoes remain grounded in the very landscape from which it launched. Few places reveal this better than Tampa Bay, whose role as a critical military staging ground has long been overshadowed by the flashier narratives of battlefield heroics and overseas conquest. Before the Rough Riders charged up San Juan Hill, they gathered on Florida's Gulf Coast, awaiting orders, supplies, and ships. Tampa Bay was not just a backdrop. It was a nerve center of logistics, diplomacy, and drama. Located northeast of downtown Tampa, today Ybor City is celebrated as one of Tampa's most vibrant and culturally rich neighborhoods. Known for its historic brick streets, iconic wrought iron balconies, and lively mix of restaurants, bars, and cigar shops. Once the heart of Tampa's immigrant labor movement and cigar industry, it now draws visitors for its nightlife, festivals, and architectural charm. While many come for entertainment, the deeper layers of Ybor's past, its role in Cuban independence, labor organizing, and the Spanish-American War, are still visible for those who know where to look. As the desire for independence from centuries of Spanish colonial rule grew in the 1890s, Tampa, and specifically the immigrant neighborhood of Ybor City, became a key center of support for the Cuban cause. Founded in 1885 by Cuban cigar manufacturer Vincente Martinez-Ybor, the now historic Ybor City became home to thousands of Cuban, Spanish, Italian, and German immigrants. Originally seeking a more hospitable and economically favorable environment than Key West, Vincente Ybor purchased land northeast of Tampa and envisioned a company town centered around the cigar industry. With support from local investors and the newly arrived South Florida Railway, Ybor City quickly became a hub of industrial growth. Its first cigar factory opened in 1886, and by the early 1890s, the neighborhood was thriving with dozens of factories, thousands of workers, and a rapidly growing immigrant population. During the run-up to the Spanish-American War, Ybor City became a hotbed of political tension and revolutionary fervor. Many of its Cuban and Spanish immigrant residents were deeply involved in the Cuban independence movement, with cigar factory workers donating portions of their wages to the cause and attending fiery speeches by exiled leaders. The presence of Cuban revolutionary José Marti in Ybor City further ignited passions as he rallied support for the liberation of Cuba from Spanish rule. Marti played a pivotal role in Ybor City's history as a leader of the Cuban independence movement and a symbol of solidarity for the immigrant working class. His significance is marked with multiple statues and markers, most of which are found toward the western end of the historic district. Marti recognized the political importance of the tightly knit community and delivered impassioned speeches at mutual aid societies. His most famous appearance came in 1893, when he delivered a powerful calling for unity among Cubans of all races and social classes, and his visits helped transform the neighborhood into a strategic center for revolutionary organizing. The Friends of Jose Marti Park in Ybor City is technically Cuban soil. The small park sits on land once owned by Afro-Cuban immigrants Roberto and Paulina Pedroso, who sheltered Jose Marti during his revolutionary work in Tampa. The land was deeded to the Cuban government in 1956 with the approval of the U.S. State Department. That means this park, though surrounded by Florida streets and American landmarks, is officially Cuban soil. In fact, the site contains soil from each of the Cuban provinces. This makes it one of the only pieces of Cuban territory in the U.S. outside of an embassy. The site remains a lasting tribute to Marti's efforts and Tampa's deep ties to the Cuban independence movement. Today, as you wander the brick-lined streets of Ybor City, don't be surprised if you cross paths with some unexpected locals. Descended from the chickens kept by early Cuban and Spanish immigrants, untamed, defiant, and proud, these birds roam freely. Their crowing is more than a wake-up call. It's a living echo of Ybor's multicultural past. In Ybor City, even the Roosters carry the spirit of revolution. Like the Cuban cigar workers who once gathered here to support their island's fight for independence, the Roosters are a living symbol of resistance and resilience. They remind us that the fight for freedom leaves traces not just in monuments, but in the very life of a neighborhood. For history travelers and curious minds alike, the Tampa Bay area offers a journey to places where the landscapes of history tell stories of revolution, resilience, and the beginnings of American empire.